Alright, so what we're going to be looking at is moving on to the second chapter. We're going to be looking at relations and functions and graphing linear equations and how to identify these. So the first thing we're going to look at is what is a relation and what is a function. And to do this, the first thing that we're going to have to do, because we're going to use this basically the rest of the way through, is the coordinate plane. Now we just use a normal Cartesian coordinate plane, and it's an x and y axis that intersect with each other, creating 4 different quadrants, okay? And these quadrants work around in a counterclockwise form. So we've got our first quadrant, our second quadrant, our third quadrant, and our fourth quadrant, okay? And now the axes that intersect each other cross at a center point called the origin. Okay? And the origin is at the point 0, 0, okay? When we have our coordinates, we name them off x, y. Okay, so the origin is at 0, 0. If you look at the first quadrant always will be plus, plus. So both the x and the y will be plus. The second quadrant, our x's will always be negative while our y's are always positive. The third quadrant, they're both negative. And the fourth quadrant, the x's are positive while the y's are negative. Okay, and so this is just a coordinate plane that we'll use, and then you can plot different points on it to represent a graph. Okay, so a relation is a set of points with an input and an output value. You can think of the x is your input and the y is your output. So there's some function out there that when we plug in -2 into it, it comes out as 4. Okay, and that's what this is. We're trying to identify a relationship with this. And so we've got 4 different points here. -2, 4, 1, -5, 0, 2, -5, 1. Okay, and that is a relation. It's just a set of pairs of input and output values. Okay, that's all it is. All right, now within this relation, we've got our domain and our range. Our domain is the x quadrant, or the x coordinates. It's the inputs. What do you put into the function? And for your domain, it's the x values. So the first one in each of these points. So your domain is your x, and then your range is your output, or your y values. Okay. So if you were wanted to identify, okay, this is what the domain and range are, you would write it out. -2, 1, 2, -5, and then 4, -5, 0, -1. That would be your range and your domain. Now, if you have any that repeat themselves, you only put them once. So if I put, let's say there's another point of, let's say 3, 0. Okay, so I have another point. I would only have to put a 3 in the domain. I would not put another 0 in the range. Okay, so if they repeat, you're only going to put them once. You don't put them multiple times. Okay, mapping. Now, a way that you might want to do this is to map it on some sort of figure. Okay, this could be the coordinate plane or something else. And a way to do it is basically like this. As we see, the first one is our x values and our second one is our y. So here's our domain and here is our range. And what I've done here is I've grouped all the x's together, then I've grouped all the y's together, and then I've drawn a connection between the x and the y's. I have shown when it's -5 for your domain, what does your range have to be? Well, your range is also -10. Okay, and I show that connection. And by doing this, we're able to identify something that leads into the next one, which deals with a function and not a function. Okay, and that deals with mostly looking at down here. Okay, so a function. What a function is making sure that for every domain, there's only one range value. Okay. So if we look here on this top one, okay, so -5, -1, and 3. If you look at -5, for that domain number, there's only one range value that it could be. Okay, so far it's a function. You go to the next one, -1, there's only one. Then you go down to 3, and you see that 3 has 2 values it could be. Because of this, this is not a function. Okay, because there's 2 values that 3, which is in the domain, can be. Now, if we look over at the next one, okay, if we look at all of the domain values, you see that all of them only have one y value that it could be. Now some of the y values are repeated. As you see, 6 here has 2 different domains, but that doesn't matter with the range. Our domain, every domain value has only one range value, okay, which means that that has to be a function. Okay, so again, if a value in your domain has 2 or more range values, it's not a function. Okay. Now if you're just given a graph, another way of identifying it is doing something called the vertical line test. And the vertical line test is, if you have a graph, you just start drawing vertical lines along it. Okay. Now as you see here in this one, it's only touching at one point, okay, for each of those lines, which is good. That's what we want. This right here is a function. Okay. So for all those vertical lines that we drew, there's only one value for there's only one point where they intersect. Now if you look here, if I were to draw a line, as you see, I cross at multiple locations. This is not a function. Okay, when I draw my vertical lines, as you see, I cross at multiple points, which means it's not a function. For every domain value, x value, you see there's multiple y values that it could be. Alright? Function, not a function. Alright, now function notation. Now, this is how you will see, you probably have seen like y equals blah 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 blah, y equals everything. And well what you're going to have now is that you have something called the function notation, which you would say is f of x. Okay, the function of f, or the function of x. Okay, the function of whatever it is. And what these are is that you'll be given a function. F of x is equal to 3x minus 5. And then from here you're given these. Okay, negative 3, 0, 5. All you're going to do is you plug in a negative 3 in for the x. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, minus 5 is negative 14. Plug in a 0 into the x, and we get 3 times 0 is 0, minus 5, negative 5. Then you plug in the 5, 3 times 5 is 15, minus 5 is 10. Okay, and so that's function notation. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Alright, your IRAD. So the first thing I want you to do is to be able to identify the domain and the range for each of these sets. So there's 2 of them. So identify, write out, okay, this is the domain, this is the range. Remember, domain is x, your range is y. And then the second one, I give you your function, okay, f of x, and I want you to find f of 4 and f of negative 2. Okay? So bring those in.